kidding. Yes, it is. Welcome everyone to end of week 5, end of week 6. I don't remember.
No idea. I've lost track.
No idea. I think end of week 5. Yes.
Must be.
I am super excited to see demos. The app works so great. I have it on my phone and was like walking around, and it's very smooth, looks very professional already. I'm super excited about it. It's really great. Who would like to demo first? On production, even.
I guess we could go. I'll share my screen. So we seemed a bit simpler this time, which is very nice. We just implemented a stop sharing location button and functionality. So if we share our location, it does take a second. I did notice the core stuff coming up in the console. I think I didn't see it before because there were so many that it like put it in a tab, and I was like, oh, what is this? So I'm glad that we're talking about that today. So sharing my location, and then if I move around and I stop sharing, it goes back to Paris coordinates. And in the code, we're using the clear watch method to get rid of the tracking ID or track it, and then the new center. And then thanks to Lauren's suggestion, we made the sharing location and stop sharing location the same button, which I think we had chatted about as an idea in the last PR, but it was really cool to actually have that functioning because it takes up less space and makes sense via the user that you would stop and start, toggle on and off. But yeah, unless Katya has anything else to add, I know Katya had the great idea to separate out the footer for the buttons. I don't know if she wants to talk about that or not. But either way, that was just some added stuff that we did that made for better functionality now that we're adding all these, or thought we were adding all these buttons to the bottom menu.
Katya, if you were sharing something, you were muted, so we didn't hear it. But I had one question. So you're using a clear watch method, and you're using that to set the tracking ID. So what does that method return? Like null or something like that? Or
that's I'm not honestly positive. Like, I feel like we chatted about this before, that it doesn't it doesn't just returns a null or something.
Yeah, by default, all JavaScript functions will return undefined if they don't return a specified value. But I could imagine something like this. So like if you try to like, document.query select something that doesn't exist in the DOM, it'll return null. That's kind of the,
okay,
like when an API or some kind in the browser doesn't, or in JavaScript doesn't have something else to return, it usually returns null. So that's probably fine, because it's either null or undefined. It's probably the value you have it set to before somebody starts sharing for the first time.
I actually think it might be undefined because we wrote a console log that then returned undefined. I'm just remembering that.
Oh, okay, cool, good to know. And wondering a little bit, I didn't get into code reviews this week, so hopefully my apologies. But wondering about the decision to have it center back on Paris instead of just leaving it where the user was. Is that a privacy thing that you were thinking of, or?
I think that has I think that was easiest to do right now. I think that in a few conversations I've had on different pairs has been a little confusing. And I don't know, I think the last time we did it, we settled on the state before the stop sharing, or if you removed the ability to share your location. So I think we may not have actually cleared that up like
Okay.
across
Okay.
the board.
All right. Makes sense.
But that has come up a few times and I think caused some confusion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's something that you all can decide as a team, right? That this is what we would like it to do at the end of the day.
100%.
Cool. Looks great.
Cool.
Nice and clean, very tidy. How did the work for you two feel this week? Manageable?
Yeah, it was very nice. We did it on Sunday. We had talked about taking on other tasks, but I, like, for instance, and school is starting again in a week or so. And so I've had lots of meetings and been on hiring committees. So I've had a little bit less time than I usually would. And I think Katya is doing a lot of work as well. So we had talked about maybe meeting again to start another issue, but the fact that we didn't have to do it was nice.
Yeah, I think it's smart. Excellent. Really nice job. All right, Jessica and Alejandro.
I'm a star. I share the screen. Well, this week we work with the back. We find on the back. It was when we sharing our location. It's the appear the user marker. That's okay. But when you wait some seconds, the map recenter automatically, and it's not the spec results. And we work this week in the solution, and in the production, we don't have this problem. We can share the location, we can drag the map, we can click the fly to me, return where you are, you can drag, you wait some seconds, and it doesn't have to maintain one new position. And that's it. Jessica, explain what we did this week. Thank you.
Or at least I'll try a little bit here. So I'll go ahead and share and set up. So Alejandro and I primarily just worked in the share my location button file this time around. One of the things that we ended up doing, hopefully this screen isn't too confusing. I during one of my donut calls was shown another extension to be able to kind of see what code was written when, so I'm kind of experimenting with that. So if it's too confusing, let me know. But one of the things that we ended up doing that was incredibly helpful was adding useRef, something that had been brought up in previous weeks by, I believe it was Megan and Katya. Turns out it ended up being very beneficial within this context here. We'll kind of get into that. But as for what we added a tracking ID, or no, that was already in there. Just a second. Like I said, I'm getting used to this here. So we added this const for useRef. And one of the things that we ended up having to do is this had previously been user shared or user location shared, and we did need to switch that to sharing location dot current. And if I'm repeating this correctly, it's because when we use the user location shared, it would only bring back the it would only affect the state, it wouldn't affect the actual value. But if we changed it up to this, then we were able to do that. For further detail, I'm sure Alejandro could explain that better. So we just went ahead and did up a few things here, and let's see. I believe there wasn't a whole lot of code that really needed to be adjusted. A lot of it was just getting that use ref in there that Alejandro came across and realized that that would be really beneficial for this particular issue. So
Can you scroll back up to the use ref? I just want to see it.
Which section?
The use ref itself, like where it gets called.
So we set it there, and then on line 6, and let's see, where does it get called?
So we're looking for like sharing location dot current. There it is on line 43.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then do you ever, like when the user stops sharing, do you set it back to false or something? Or I don't see that happening anywhere. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah, no problem.
Sweet. That's
And
great.
y'all had a interesting thing with the PR. I'm curious. I sort of followed it a little bit, but I was like how did that work out?
I mean, that was one of those instances. So Lauren had referred to, hey, by the way, you're probably going to want to merge main into the branch that Alejandro and I were working on. I asked to take on getting some merge experience, and so I went ahead and made a big ol' error right away and did not merge main into our branch initially, but merge like we normally do. So that got a little it got a little messy, so we ended up having to revert. What was it? We had to revert the PR and do basically, I don't even know how to describe it honestly at this point. I wrote down some notes so that I could clarify what was going on, but it was just a matter of reverting back to the state that we had it at and then doing it the way that we should, which is merging main into the PR first to be able to take care of any conflicts that we had. So then because when I initially merged our PR into main after you all had merged, it said, oh, we did it, no conflicts, but it totally eliminated a bunch of work. So it was not, GitHub did not serve us well at that point.
Yeah, I think the challenge with your PR is that there weren't actually any merge conflicts. So GitHub wasn't going to tell you anything like that, but GitHub isn't smart enough to know, like you had removed some code that main was relying on. And you wouldn't have known that. You wouldn't have known that unless you just had everything memorized, right, from main. You wouldn't have known that that variable that Megan and Katya's code was relying on, that you were removing it and it was going to break what was on main. So you wouldn't have known that unless you had merged main into your branch or rebased main into your branch. Yeah, and so sometimes teams will have it set up so that you always have to have the latest code from main into your branch before you're allowed to merge it, right? GitHub will prevent you from merging if there are any merge conflicts. And sometimes teams will set up special rules. They'll be like, nope, you have to have the latest in your branch, even if it's been approved and there are no merge conflicts, just to avoid this kind of problem. And for a small team, it's actually that's a really great thing to have. For a bigger team, it's harder because we have lots of pull requests going in and out all of the time, and it kind of slows things down. But for a small team, it might be smart.
Okay. So you're saying that's a common practice, is to merge main into the branch that you're working on before doing the final push into main?
I try to have the latest on my branch. Yep,
Cool.
just to make sure, just to like quadruple check.
Nice.
That's a process that's sometimes called branch maintenance. So like if you have a long-lived branch, long-lived branches aren't great, but we have some of those, don't we, Lauren, at Zapier? But so, you know, there's like somebody will have the task of just like doing daily branch maintenance, just always pulling the latest from main into the branch every day, just to make sure you're kind of up to date. And like Lauren said, on a big team where there's lots of stuff flying into the main line, it's even more important because, you know, otherwise, yeah, you're gonna sit there with merge conflicts for a whole day or something. Oh yeah, so much rebasing.
That's cool to know, and that's makes it feel less, even though this first time around was definitely extremely intimidating to me, it helps to know that this is kind of this can be a common practice, and to get used to it.
I mean, it was great that
exactly.
you got to go through that experience, honestly, like that you got to do a revert. So now you've had the experience of like something bad happened, right? Something bad happened. We got to roll it back. Now you know how to do it, right? You've had that experience before. It's really great.
Well, I have the first round of experience, definitely.
Exactly.
I had to go through the notes and through the chat and just write everything down really like methodically, just to kind of be like, okay, what happened here? What happened here? Instead of just doing what I was told, you know, and not really thinking about it. So it really helped actually to have all of that in the chat to be able to go back over for me. So just to help.
That's great.
Solidify.
Yeah, I love that you were like wanted to understand all the steps. I think that's the right instinct for sure. That's great. I know whenever I have to revert or whatever, I always have to look it up. Like I can't do it off the top of my head. So
No,
that's reassuring. Actually, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Megan, were you going to say something? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I think Jessica asked all of it, just like best practices and that. So covered.
Cool. Nice job, everybody.
All right. Y'all want to talk about cores? Doesn't matter because we're going to talk about cores anyway. But decide, you know, make you feel like you're contributing. So cores is not everybody's favorite topic, but it is important and it applies to our project. So we're going to talk about it. So what's the cores? Alejandro, as a non-native speaker, that's sort of like there's like somebody might, if they might make an exclamation of like, what the hell? So this is like a sort of a play on that phrase. So what's the cores? Anyway, so that's my idea of humor. All right. So we're going to talk about what the cores, why the cores, and how the cores. But I first want to make sure we're all, you know, have some common language to use because we're going to be using these words a lot throughout the rest of the presentation. So first thing is a request. So a request, you know, like you put a URL into your browser and you hit return. That makes a request to the server. But what actually is a request? A request is just, it's a set of headers, and we'll define headers in a second, that's sent to a web server by a client application. And notice I didn't say web browser because there are different clients that could make requests to a server. This is all, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Right, anyway, so it's just a set of headers, and headers are just text also. So I'm going to do this in a minute, but let's do this now so you can kind of take it a step at a time. So if we look at the network tab, all these things in the left here, those are all requests. So each of those has, you know, a set of headers. So this is very simple. There's not much to it, but it's literally just text that gets sent in a certain format, specified format, to a web server. The web server understands the format, is able to parse it all out and make a response. So a response is a set of headers and an optional body, which we'll define in a second, sent by a web server to a client application in response to a request. Okay, so client application makes a request, the server makes a response. It's all just text going back and forth, but there's headers and there's the body, which is sort of a separate thing. Okay, so headers are just keys and values. So it's, let's see if I can find a good example in here. Randomly clicking around. One thing I know, wait a second. Where's our nearby call? Reload the page. This is probably pretty small. All right. So this is an example of a header. So the header is actually this, well, that's too long to say. The header is this part. So content dash type colon. And then the value, so that's the key. And the value is application slash JSON. And this is all just text. It's literally text that gets sent back and forth. But that's let me zoom out. But that's an example of a header, right? A key and a value. The body, so the body of a response it's the payload of a response. It can be text, so it can be HTML, JSON, something like that. It can also be a binary file, so images, MP3s, like all those kinds of things that can be sent in response as part of the body. Here we got an image, a binary being sent as part of the response, but it can also be, it can also be text. So, this is JSON. This is just text that gets sent back. All right. Any questions about those four terms? Because we're gonna be talking about a lot. All good. All right. I just never know like what people actually learn in boot camps and stuff. Like stuff is a little bit low level. So anyway, all right. So CORS is short for cross-origin resource sharing. And it's a mechanism that uses additional HTTP headers to tell web browsers to give a web application running at one origin access to resources from a different origin. So we'll talk about what an origin is in a second. So a web application executes a cross-origin HTTP request when it requests a resource from a different origin, domain, protocol, or port. And I'll give examples of those in a second. So HTTP is what all this stuff is based on. Hypertext, hypertext, HTML, what does it stand for?
Hypertext Transfer Protocol.
I think that's it. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So all that stuff, HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, defines what a request and response, what headers are, all that kind of stuff. So that's the protocol that this is all built on. But the important thing here is that CORS is just an agreement between web servers and web browsers to use additional headers to say that it's okay to access things across different origins. That's kind of the crux of CORS. So it's really a security mechanism. So, and it only applies to web browsers. So that's really important because if it applied to servers talking to each other, then this proxy thing that we're using wouldn't work. But because that's a server talking to a server, none of this applies. It's really only in the web browser context that CORS happens. So a web browser will assume that a request is safe if it's from the same origin. So we make a request, so we go to mycoolsite.com and it makes an XML HTTP request or a fetch request to HTTPS mycoolsite.com / some resource, right? API.json. And the browser's like, cool, same origin. Here you go. Here's your stuff. Here's what you want. So a browser will assume by default that a request from a different origin is not safe. So we have, HTTPS mycoolsite.com makes a request to HTTPS somebadSite.com. The browser's like, nope, that doesn't work. By default, that won't go through. So less obvious examples of cross-origin requests. So remember it's domain, which is what we're looking at here. So mycoolsite.com and somebadSite.com. Those are different domains. The other things we talked about are protocols and ports. So here's an example of a different port, right? So it's actually same scheme, same domain name, but this one has a different port. That the browser will assume by default that that's also not a safe request. Here we have the different protocol, different scheme, HTTPS, so that's secure, and then this is not secure. It's going to assume that that's not good either. So those are considered cross-origin requests. Doesn't mean they can't happen. It just means they're not going to be allowed by default. Everyone following so far? Yeah. I saw Alejandro move. I thought maybe he's going for the unmute button. He is. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I am confused. Little question about the origin. It's about the domain, or it's possible IP address, for example, 127.001. I don't know.
Yeah, localhost, right? So that's a good question. So localhost is kind of an exception. I think in most cases you can make those requests from localhost. Is that true, Lauren? Do you know?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Like usually your localhost is running as HTTP, not HTTPS, but you know, like you're here developing on, you know, doing all this stuff without too much concern about cores when you're on your local host. I think it doesn't apply to localhost. It's like, I think it's just an exception. So localhost, the actual like HTTP://localhost is the same as HTTP://127.0.0.1. Those are the same thing. But maybe, Lauren, would you mind maybe looking that up while I continue?
Yep, I will.
Cool, thanks. All right, so we have our port and we have our protocol or scheme. Those are examples. So other places that I know have tripped me up in the past when I've run into CORS problems, like when a canvas element is requesting an image resource. I don't know. I mean, I guess it makes sense once I think about it. Like it's literally using the same mechanisms to make a request, but you know, I didn't think about it at first. And like you're like, why is my canvas element not showing the image that I want to put on it? But you know, if they're on different schemes or different domains or different ports or something, that's not going to work. The other one is an @font face declaration. So in your CSS, you know, if your site's not secure, but the font that you're trying to download is not, that's considered a cross-origin request as well. So sometimes these things, it kind of crops up in places that you would necessarily be thinking are considered web browsers. You know what I mean? See some chats. Chat. Hypertext transfer protocol. Hypertext markup language. Secure. Yep. Right. All right. So, how the cores? We talked about what. We talked about why. The why being a security thing and all that stuff. So there are two sort of dances that CORS does, right? So there's a simple one, and there's what's called a pre-flight, which we'll talk about in a second. So a simple request, and these are sort of the original HTTP methods. So get, head, and post. I think everyone knows what a GET request is, right? That's just like a simple, it's like get a URL. Post is used when you're creating a new resource on the server. So, you know, it can be fully encrypted and all that kind of stuff. Anybody know what a head request is? Ever heard of that? A head request is when you send headers only. So, and you're just like you send headers and you're expecting the server to respond with only headers. So it's not used a ton, but it is a valid method. And sometimes if you know that the resource that you're asking for is really heavy, like if it's like it'd be a big payload or something, but you're not sure if the server is going to give it to you or not. So like maybe the user's not logged in or something, you can make a head request and it'll get back headers that tell you not to bother making the big request and like wasting a bunch of bandwidth or something. So there's situations where you might use a head request, but that's kind of out of scope for this. But just know that get, head, and post are also considered simple CORS requests. So, so we have HTTP example.com makes a request to HTTPS service.example.com. So there's kind of two things that are already different, right? These are, the browser is going to assume this is not a safe thing by default, but it sends, it's an origin header. So, yeah, so Lauren, the question around localhost and CORS is just whether CORS applies to localhost, I think, because, you know, like we're developing in localhost as we build the application, and we're able to make all these requests and without any problem.
Do you mean request to a different origin, or request to my
Yeah,
own
yeah.
origin? Oh,
Yeah, to different
you
origins,
can run into CORS errors on your local host.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know the answer to your question.
Thank you.
So yeah, so if we look here, let's see. Oh, request served from this cache. All right, well, let's make a different one. Okay, that was not from cache. So the request, here you see the origin. So your application is making this request to segaha.com and then nearby API, and it's sending this origin header. Okay, so that's step one. And this is a simple, that's a GET request, right? Like we're doing the, I think we're not posting, right? So it's a GET request. So we send the origin header. The server responds with access control allow origin, and kind of confirms that the thing that you're asking about, your origin is an allowed origin, right? So that's part of the response. So here it is responding saying, oh, that's your origin? Yep, I allow that origin. Okay, so that's a piece of it. And then in this simple world, the server also sends the body of the response. So it's one request to the server. The server is like, yep, that sounds good. Here's what you asked for. Or the server doesn't like you, doesn't think that that's a safe domain or whatever, and responds with a 403 error, forbidden error. So those are the two. So you make this request with the origin header, and the server either gives you what you want or it gives you a forbidden error. If it's giving you what you want back, then it has this access control allow origin header in the as part of the response. That'll make sense. So here's the request, has the origin header. When it gives a response, it says, yep, that's good, and then gives you the actual payload as well. All right. So let's talk about the more complicated case here. So are people familiar with put and delete requests? So put is when you want to modify something, a resource that's already on the server. Delete is when you want to delete something. So in this world, it's a little bit more complicated. The browser makers wanted to make sure that you were kind of doing what you meant to be doing, or it's kind of, I guess, maybe a bigger problem if they let this security thing go through. So they have this thing called Preflight. So what happens is our page at example.com makes an options request, another type of request. The options request is basically saying like, hey server, what's allowed here? I don't know what's allowed. Tell me what's allowed and I'll do that. So you make an options request to the server along with your origin, just like last time, and another header called the host header. So you're saying, this is who I am, this is who I think you are, what am I allowed to do? And the server says, either says you're not allowed to do anything, get out of here, or it says, yep, okay, that's who you are, and here's what I'll allow you to do. So access control allow methods. Yeah, you can do a put, you can do a delete. It could respond with just one thing. It could respond with other things that aren't the things you asked for or that you want to do. Like if you're trying to do a delete and it's, it may not allow delete, right? So, but it doesn't send any data in the first response. So what this does is it's called Preflight. So you make this request, the server says yes or no, that's allowed, and then you make the other request. But the browser does this all sort of under the hood. You don't have to actually make 2 requests yourself. But that's what's going on under the hood. The browser's like, is this cool? Okay, it's cool. Yeah, here, I'll actually do it. This does not apply to our case. We're dealing with the simple case here, the GET request. All right. Any questions about all of that?
That's super interesting. I didn't realize like with those kind of requests that they're actually sending back like the okay or the no first, and then the payload on the second time.
Yeah, a little chatty, but
yeah,
security is important. So, so our app, our version of What's Near Me, uses Wikipedia's nearby API to fetch Wikipedia entries. But that API doesn't have core set up in a way that would let us access it directly. So that's why we go through our pass-through proxy with the core settings so we can have access to it. So, we've looked at the script before. So nearby.php, which is running on my server. So that's why I get to decide who gets to access it. And basically I don't know if you know any PHP, but basically any request to a PHP script sends along it creates this kind of server variable. These are the headers. So I'm looking for the host header, the origin header. I have allowed host, allowed origin. So in here, actually, I guess this is, I must have known this at some point, I guess, but so this is why it works for our local applications, because I have localhost port 3000 specified here. It works for my production app. It works for the pilot, which was posted on Netlify, and it works for ours, which is on .web.app. And this is actually, this is a gist. So this isn't the actual script. The actual script currently has, a wildcard for anything at .web.app while we're developing, and then I'm going to take that out when we're not working on it actively, just to close that little security or security wall, I guess. Yeah. So what this does, this is just a function that decides whether it's a valid origin. So it's basically, it boils down to like, is the request coming from one of these 4 hosts? And if it is, we're going to return the origin that was passed in, and the actual host itself. So I guess if it's, I don't remember what this is doing actually, to be honest. But anyway, we return the origin if it's in the list of origins, and I needed to do this for some other reason. And if neither of those 2 things is true, we return false. So the false thing, it's not a valid origin. Then the rest of this is pretty procedural, so which means instead of function calls, it's just kind of working its way through the script as it line by line. So if the origin is a valid origin, I'm going to set some headers. So the access control allow origin. These other ones I didn't talk about in the presentation. Well, the methods I did talk about, but basically setting these are other just cores things that kind of make it work more broadly, right? Like the really important one is this allow origin. If it's not a valid origin, so if we get into the else, I'm just going to set this 403 forbidden status and then exit, and that'll be what gets returned. If it's an options request, we're done. Like we just set the headers and respond. If it's not an options request, we're going to extract out the actual query parameters that were sent in. So we're only going to respond with actual data if there's both a lat and a long, if they're both numeric, and if they fall within the parameters of a valid value for those two variables. So a latitude, at most is 90 and at least is -90 for the poles, right? And longitude is at most 180 and at least at the smallest is -180. So if the values are within those ranges, it's a valid thing to send on to Wikipedia. So we then kind of build up this string with Latin long is in here somewhere, but okay, back at the end here. So the starting point, I guess it's in there a couple times. And then we have our URL. And have you all used curl before? Curl anything to you? So curl is like it's a Unix command basically, but it runs on servers, Unix servers. There's probably a Windows equivalent, but it's basically a way of just making, I guess it's probably stands for call URL, now that I think about it. Never thought about that before. So we're gonna make a curl request. So we set some options, we tell it what the URL is that we want to hit. Anyway, I won't get into all the details of curl. Client URL, aha, okay, cool. So basically capture the output from that, close the handle to the curl call, and then we say we're returning JSON and we echo the JSON. And then we're done at that point. So if we don't have a valid Latin long, we say it's a bad request, which is different than forbidden, right? Like it's not like, at this point, we know that it's an allowed call, it's just that it's not in a good format. And that's how that script works. So, the important parts of that are really, the most important part is this access control allow origin header that we're setting. And this is what I was talking about, where it's like this, my web server can talk to their web server without worrying about cores. This is really just to allow a web browser to access this resource that's on a different domain. That makes sense?
No, we could have had it so that we set that up like on the client side too, right? If rather than going through your proxy, or is it just, is this particular API endpoint super fussy about it, or?
Well, we couldn't set it up on the client. So the client can't mimic a server in that way. Like if it's in the web browser, it's restricted by all the core stuff. So what we could have done is we could have potentially set up our own proxy on, .web.app somehow. I just haven't looked into how to do that. You'd have to write basically the equivalent of this in JavaScript and have it running on our web server for it to work.
Okay, so we couldn't do like fetch URL, whatever that URL is, and then set the headers.
Yeah, it's not going to work from a web browser. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And yeah, we kind of already looked at this, but yeah, we can see that it's, we got the origin here, we have the access control allow origin, the other things that I set, so like allow methods get. So basically that's, if the server didn't return this, the browser would throw an error. It wouldn't let you display the results. It wouldn't let you access the data. I just wanted to have this GIF in here because, and apologies if no one's seen this, but it's is that a Saturday Night Live thing? I don't know where it comes from, but it's like, will it blend? And this scientist guy he puts like cell phones and like all kinds of weird stuff into a blender just to see if it'll blend. So anyway, will it cores? There's actually a site called Will It Cores, so you can actually you can try things out, like see if I don't know, let's see, sample.com, and you already want to send a request to send.com, and want to do a GET request. Skip that part, and okay, So it's saying that this is a simple request. It's not going to do an options request. It doesn't mean that it's allowed to return. So what headers will the server return in response? Let's just skip that too. Oh, no, it's not going to CORS. So anyway, you can, if you have a real world scenario, you can put in all the parameters and see if it's going to work sort of without building, writing a bunch of code. And then this has examples of how to enable CORS on a bunch of different, like PHP and Java and like a bunch of different languages, Ruby, whatever. So if you are tasked with making like this CORS things work at work, you can basically look at how to do it here in a safe way. And that's about it. So yeah, what do y'all think of that? Pretty exciting. CORS, good stuff.
Good. It's good for me. Help me understand it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it puts some concepts into a little bit better into perspective for me because I had zero, like, yeah, I don't remember the word CORS being brought up ever at boot camp. So this is just kind of putting pieces of what I did learn under the CORS umbrella, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in a boot camp, I can understand that they would just want to keep things simple and not, get people kind of confused about all this like kind of detail or whatever. But you get out in the real world and you have to deal with it. So I'll post the slides in the chat.
Cool. Right. Do we want to, we should look at the control chart.
Oh yeah. You want to give it a shot?
Yeah, I will give it a shot. And then I will ask for your assistance. Okay, so this is, let's see, I can narrow down. Do I want to narrow down the time frame?
You can even drag on the timeline to do it.
Oh, like if I just
yeah, like click and drag.
Oh,
yeah. Look at that.
Oh, I see.
FYI, I need to leave right at the top of the hour because I have to drive 7 hours today. So, and this it is a little fussy. You have to like make sure you don't go past the end of it.
Oh, okay.
Jira, yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right, so when did we start? We started like the week after 4th of July, and then we've been holding steady, like 4.6 days, 4.6, This, let's see, where are we now? Today is August 14th.
14th, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're sticking right around 5 days. I think some of this is a little bit skewed because we had an epic that stayed, we just didn't close it after we were done. So I think that threw off, like made this number a little bit higher. But I feel like, how did the work feel for everybody? So Megan and Katya, Megan, I know you said that it felt a little bit more manageable for you. I think Alejandro and Jessica had to spend a little bit more time maybe with our issue, especially with the production stuff that happened at the end of the week. But how did the workload feel, I guess?
I think the workload moved along. I mean, I think the workload was not all that bad. I think it was just the hang up at the end of getting things merged properly, at least from my perspective.
Cool. Alejandro, Katya, do you have other things to share?
In my opinion, my humble opinion, I think when this week I feel some days we didn't nothing because we wait for the review for pull requests, and I would like to take other issue maybe or no, but I feel some days I did nothing, and I think we can improve this, but it's difficult I think because some people there is a many work to do, or I don't know what is this.
Mhm. Yeah, and it is supposed to be 5 hours, so there are likely to be days when you don't do anything. And then there's the review cycle and everything too. And I know like I probably didn't help that by not being super active in there, but Lauren, I'd be interested just to maybe you could use, there's a time frame thing on the left, a little drop down. You could do like the last 2 weeks and just see if that's any different. And then if you scroll up a little bit, you'll see the summary, I think.
Oh, okay.
So 6 days average. So yeah, we did have a couple of little outliers, right? Like the one trend that I'm seeing is that there's more variation now than there was before. And that could just be we have more data points too, but there are a couple of little outliers which are stretch that light blue area a little bit.
Yeah. I think, what is this one? Oh, if I click on it, it tells me. That's that one. This one I think is so this is an epic one.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then.
And I think that one just stayed open for a long time, or we just didn't move it to done, even though it was done. It's part of it. And then I don't know what this one is. Same here.
Yep.
But I kind of liked it for everybody that it was maybe a little bit lighter week, and we reset expectations that you don't have to put in so much time every week. Like everyone's making good progress. I feel like we're in good shape with the application. It looks great. We've got the like really, really big pieces done. And I think the code is really high quality. So that's super awesome. Like it's really tidy and buttoned up. I really like it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think like if we were to stop right now, you have a useful, usable app. You know what I mean? So the things that we're going to be adding are like features that make it even better, and tightening up the design and stuff like that. But yeah, you're tracking really well towards having a great app at the end of the 8 weeks. So as much as we can, let's try to keep this pace, this sustainable pace going. And I think one thing it's hard, like in the other project, the shopping list project, it's very clear. You do one issue, you're done for the week, and then you can kind of put it aside, put it out of your mind. And this is a lot more real world where it's like, okay, I'm done with that. I could pick up the next one. Like you're having to like make these decisions about, like what do you do with the rest of your time? Like I only, I've done 4 out of my 5 hours. Is 1 hour really enough to pick up another issue? Do I want to get started on that or not? Like it's you'll be encountering that the rest of your career. So it'll just be 40 hours instead of 5 hours. So hopefully only 40 hours.
Yeah. Alejandro, I see your question in the chat. So if I'm in here and I click on a particular item, it'll say, so this is TCL 13, selected for development. It's sat in selected for development for 3 days, etc. I don't know why in progress it was 0. ready for reviews. It says it's spent. So in review, it spent almost 4 days, I guess. And then the total cycle time for this particular ticket was 1 week and 7 hours.
Oh, so actually, that's a good call out. So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, you see all that breakdown, but I think we probably want to exclude selected for development from our chart.
Yeah,
because that's just when it's sitting in that sort of to-do column. So if you scroll down, there's a little filter thing. Yeah, the columns thing. You can uncheck that one.
Okay. That'll tidy things up a little bit.
Yep.
So then.
So it brings the average down. It actually brings the variation down a lot as well. So that's great.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, I'm gonna need to drop so I can get on the road, but great job, everybody. I'm excited to I guess you're going to decide now. Like we decided as a group last time that search was kind of the next highest priority. So I'm excited to see y'all dig into that. Let us know if you have questions.
Cool. All right, I'll stay on and we can
Okay.
talk about the issues a little bit. I know you've gone over them before, so
Yep.
we won't
All right.
spend a ton of time. Bye.
Okay,
See you
thanks.
soon.
Drive
See you.
safe. Yeah,
Thanks.
drive safe.
I'm going to Oregon tomorrow for a week with my family. And so I get to go say hi to Andrew. I'm so excited.
Have you two met in person before?
Nope.
Aw, that'll
I
be
know.
great.
I know. I'm super excited. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, your violin is back. Okay. So our pairs this week, Alejandro and Megan are working together, and Jessica and Katya are working together. So I know that you met with Andrew last week, like last Sunday, and decided that search was the next highest priority thing to pick up, right? And you've talked about these already, so I'll spare you all and not talk through them again. But allowing users to search for a location. Do you think, having gone through both this issue and allow users to delay API calls, would it be better to break this one down into smaller stories that the pairs can work on and like have that bias toward done, and both teams continue to work just on this search? Or is it manageable for one team to do search and one team to do delay API calls?
I think it will be better to have two teams working on two separate issues, because otherwise it will be again split into 55 sub stories and will drag on and complicate the whole development stories process like it was 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So you'd okay. What does everyone else think?
Even though they're kind of large, I sort of agree. I mean, we did have a hard time doing subtask. Not extremely hard, but just like some of them, we might have broken it down too minute and then found out that we did 2 in 1 issue or something like that. I don't know. And of course, we were all working together, so it made it easier. But I could see if we separate that out, we could be causing like merge conflicts that could be confusing.
Okay.
And I think that while it is a really good opportunity to, within TCL, to maybe if we all were on the search one for number 15 and broke it down into subtasks. I mean, on one hand, that's good experience. Also, the amount of time it takes to effectively break them down into subtasks, it is a lot of time.
Sure.
And so I think that there's a bit of a give and take with that too. We would end up spending more time communicating with each other, which isn't a bad thing, but we would still probably put just as much time in as if we were working in separate pair, like one pair working on 15 and one pair working on 16. That's okay. I could be totally off, but that's kind of that's where my brain is about it right now.
Cool. Alejandro, what do you think? We got 3 for splitting up into groups, 1 on 15, 1 on 16.
For the past experience, because it was difficult, I prefer try to separate different stories. One group 15, other group 16, because in the past experience, the first days it's okay, we can learn, but when you try to create a subtask, it's difficult to merge, also communicate.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure what is the time with this week for the people. And it's more manageable one story for per developers. But if we need a help, I think we can help support if need
Mhm.
some.
Okay, I think I think that's a totally valid approach. So which pair would like to work on search?
I'm indifferent at this point. Katya,
Okay.
do you have a preference of either?
Not really.
Okay.
Okay, then Alejandro, Megan, do you have a preference?
I would like to work in the search
You'd like to
location,
work on that?
but I don't know what they think, Megan. For me, it's okay.
I'm a little indifferent too. They both look, a little complex, so they're both going to be maybe equally as difficult. So
I think they're both
choosing like an
challenging,
easy route out or anything.
All right, Alejandro and Megan, you are team search. Jessica and Katya, you are team allow users to delay API calls. And then, yeah, that's what we got. So just a reminder that there's the ability to create your own pairing thread in the workflow in Slack, right? Let's see. Create a story thread. Right, go ahead and do that for yourselves. And then, yeah, I'm doing office hours this week. So I'm traveling all day tomorrow. So probably on maybe later today, I'll just post a vote for your time that you'd like to do office hours. And I'll see you later this week. And don't forget to reach out for help when you need it. Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice work, everybody. The app looks really, really great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.